Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 30th of October, comes to you from London. And it's good to be back after quite a few weeks away in Asia and Australia and the Middle East. So, looking at the HSBC chart this morning, out with strong results, and the shares are up. They were 350 2 years ago, sitting at 650p. Just 2 years later. No big surprises there. We just hit the T key and it puts all the trends and targets on the chart. These targets were all generated off these buying thrusts. So these buying thrusts were just telling us all the time that HSBC going up. A little downside target there that was met, then a new upside target, another little downside target that was met, and a new upside target. This target, the last target, might just be a push too far. We'll be interesting to see if we can make new highs. And of course, new highs means happy shareholders. Everyone's happy with new highs. So, and that means less selling pressure. So, really quite key there that we're seeing the chart there on HSBC. So we start by looking at the markets. Look at the dollar index first of all, down very slightly. Of course, geopolitical turmoil in the Middle East just weighing quite heavily on the macro, and we are just seeing here no clear targets on the medium and short term charts on the dollar. And if we look at the euro, that's just looking a little bit stronger as we start to come through the cloud there, but still on a downtrend against the dollar resurgence. Japan's been the interesting one. There's an upside target on Japan to 155, and we just have nudged above that 150 level but can't hold it. We tend to see a lot of intervention from the Bank of Japan at around 150, and that's showing up in the volatility on the 60-minute chart there, so really quite interesting. Sterling is slightly up this morning against the dollar, but we do have these downside targets, 1 to 117.81, and a new orange target that's not yet activated will be activated with a move to a new low, so quite key there. Looking at Bitcoin, we're seeing here on the Bitcoin chart that we have got a very interesting picture with the upside targets. There's a very big upside target still there to 50,000 on Bitcoin, and we saw this jump in the price last week to $35,000, and now we're just looking at the 60-minute chart. And if we look at the 60-minute chart, these were the upside targets. They were met faster than the target slope, and we typically use a time frame of 2, so that means that it goes up every 0.1% every 2 hours on the 60-minute chart, and we are again just waiting for this new upside target to be activated. So for the moment, that's the picture for Bitcoin, and that's what we're waiting for. Looking at the markets, the Nasdaq, very interesting picture on the Nasdaq. Activated the downside target last week, so that's really quite key. But we've got this new little mini upside target, counter trend, because we are below the cloud on the 60-minute chart, and we have a new potential downside target that's orange, which will turn red if we see a move lower and we activate that target. Now, for the moment, not looking likely today because we're seeing the futures are actually up for the open. So we see here the S&P future, and again, notice how this downside target was given back in September at around 43.60, and the target was 40.20, and we're moving all the way towards that target. And on the 60-minute chart, much the same thing. So pretty bearish there, although we're up this morning on the futures. If you look at the FTSE future, didn't have a very good week last week, heading towards these downside targets again, but we have activated this we've got this upside target that would be activated above 7750, but for the moment it's the downside targets that are in train, so not looking good there. If we look at the DAX in Germany, similar picture here, we're up 0.6% this morning, but note how these downside targets are dominating. This target given all the way back there, that's where the target was given. It was actually happened faster and slightly exceeded. We do have a potential upside if we make a new high, but for the moment it's the downside targets that dominate there, so keep an eye on those. Taking a look at Japan, down 1% overnight. Interesting that we've got this short-term target activated, waiting for another one here to activate. And of course, if we do make this lows on the 60-minute chart, we activate this downside target here, meaning that this upside target, quite interesting, and people ask this, meaning this upside target that was given back in January at the start of the year, we probably would say that that target just didn't quite get made, and now we're not looking to that target. We're really watching for this new one to be activated to the downside. And that's the beauty of these time series targets. Noticing that the upside targets are not quite being met is a little bit bearish, and we are just coming back below the cloud on the daily chart, and you can bet your bottom yen that the Japanese are watching that Ichimoku cloud on the daily chart. So really quite interesting there. We're seeing that downside target activated. Looking at the Hang Seng, we had strong results out from HSBC this morning, of course, but the index itself looking lower, and quite interesting that we are seeing these downside targets dominating here. So that's a feature of a lot of equity markets at the moment. Looking at China, we've got downside targets here as well. This is the daily chart and the 60-minute chart. Quite interesting here that we've got these downside targets again just really dominating, even though we're getting a little relief rally, and we do have a little upside target 2% higher, but the downside target is nearly 11% lower. So putting these time frames into context is quite valuable. The Sensex in India is one of the best looking markets. We've got these big upside targets, especially on the long-term chart. You go to the long-term chart, 78,000 is the target there, so I'm 22% higher. That's on the weekly, but really it's at the moment just seeing that pullback, and it says we've really got to pull back some 4% before we would start rising again. Of course, new highs above 67,500 would be good there, but for the moment the downside target is nearly met, a little upside target, but we are just bearish below the cloud there as well, so we've got to be cautious. The Aussie market down 0.8%, so not looking great there, heading towards the downside targets both on the daily chart and on the 60-minute chart. You just can't ignore the targets there. They're there. We'll look at the energy mix in a minute, but let's looking at some of the other things. Let's look at wheat. We see here downside targets, train tracks. We have got a little upside target bucking the trend here, but really those red targets are dominating. And that's how you resolve it. The multiple red targets are outweighing the upside target, and we're below the cloud on both charts, so not a great picture there for wheat at the moment. Now gold, very interesting situation here. On Friday there was a short-term target to $2,003. We actually went a little bit higher to 2008, so that's pretty good, but we're just struggling to hold this 2,000 level. Really critical level for gold, and of course we're really waiting for a new high to activate this massive upside target. We do have one already activated to 2.6 on the weekly chart, so worth watching there. But the picture is one of turbulence there, and we've got to just watch that and wait for new targets to appear on the 60-minute chart. Looking at silver, we see here again these downside targets are the ones that are dominating, the more recent ones on the daily chart, but we do have a new upside target, some 3% higher on the 60-minute chart, so implying that this downside target has probably been fulfilled, even though we didn't quite get there, because we've got a new upside target and we're above the cloud. So that's really how you resolve this. US 10-year yields up 0.5%. And again, the target's met here. We're waiting for a new downside target to be activated. That's why it's in orange. On the 60-minute chart, we do have that downside target, but again, we're waiting for an upside target here to be activated. So that's why it's in orange. But if it activates, then that turns green. So it would be quite interesting to see how this tussle plays out. We are in the cloud, meaning the picture is just not so clear. We're waiting for the next move. Apple were down quite substantially on Friday. Amazon certainly fell. We've got these downside targets hanging over us for Apple. They've been there for ages. And if we look at Amazon, they were down 6%, really significant there. The downside targets were already in place, so no big surprises there. And if we look at some of the energy mix, we've got crude oil down this morning. Very interesting picture on emissions, which I talked about on LinkedIn earlier this morning, where the 60-minute chart's got these downside targets that were met. We're below the cloud. We had a mini upside target given this morning that was activated and met very quickly within 30 minutes at 8:30. And then these targets are all real time, come on the chart. This one here, really interesting. I can actually put an alert, say, tell me when that that target is activated. And when we fall below the activation level, that downside target back to 79.05 will then be in train. So that's a very interesting picture there holding through on the emissions chart. And of course, we can look at any of the charts we want. We can look at TTF, MBP, etc. So a lot going on in the markets at the moment. Here we are, see the TTF targets, train tracks on the short term. Really very interesting there. Now that's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. Bye for now.